ESPN Diana tweets, the Atlanta Falcons have discussed several trade offers for Julio Jones, including an offer for a first-round pick. Per sources, there's a sense around the league a trade could go down as early as next week, which has kind of been the target, right, after June 1 for him. And an offer for a future first-round pick, not several first-round pick offers. But, it could have been that they're the ones that broached the first-round pick, but a first-round pick has been discussed. That's the information.
The thing with June 1 is you can just move the money back to 2022. Like, you can just allocate money for future years. That's all it is. It's not like you get to cut money off. You just get to push the can down the road.
And we know the cap's up another 30 in 2022.
Yeah, so for them, it definitely helps. But I laughed at some of the reaction that I think Florio wrote that the Falcons were mad. I understand, right? They think that's hurting their value or whatever, but the NFL was mad. Like, give me a fucking break. There is no chance. I can't see Goodell being like, I can't give no chance.
Well, to me, I can see they're mad. You're talking about the Shannon thing. I can see they're mad in that it's just not the way to do. It's not the way you do business, right? If Julio doesn't know, you don't put him on speakerphone off the air, just around other people, right? Like, that's the funny one to me. Like, I would not put somebody on, even if I was not on television, I wouldn't put somebody on speakerphone around other people and ask them compromising questions so the other people could hear without telling. It's the first thing you say, hey, man, you're on speaker. And then someone's like, oh, you're on speaker with Jimmy in the car. Like, what's up, Jimmy?
But we're assuming that this wasn't an orchestrated deal.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, if it's not orchestrated, then they absolutely should be mad about it. It doesn't mean they don't also like that it happened. Mad's not the right word. Roger Goodell, if Julio didn't know, Roger would say, that's a bullshit move.
Well, yeah, but Julio would have came out and said, I got screwed. Julio was a part of it.
Again, if Julio's a part of it, then no one, the Falcons being mad is irrelevant. Like, none of it matters. I'm saying even in the worst case scenario where he didn't know, I agree with you that the NFL's not mad because it's great for business, but it would be, I do think the NFL would be like, that's kind of bullshit by Shannon.
Well, I agree. If Julio got hoodwinked by Shannon.
But the Falcons losing leverage is like, Falcons, the Falcons don't get to be mad about this unless they're mad on the basis of journalism. But they don't get to be mad from like a negotiating standpoint.
Did you see the Atlanta Falcons tweeted earlier this week? Update on the Julio Jones situation. And it was a link to this story. It was like, nothing makes me feel more uncomfortable than like, that's just, I don't even know what to
Breaking
feel.
News? Is that what you're talking about?
But I just know that like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, do you feel good when you're the social media guy and like,
you're talking about makes you uncomfortable the team website doing stuff.
Yeah, but in a way that's hard for me to like verbalize, but I just know when I see it, I go, oh, it's just very weird. It's very
the team website has a really odd position of being owned by the team, but also just if the biggest story is Julio, then you want to do those numbers. So I understand where you're coming from on that. But ultimately, I'm with you. Like, this is great for the NFL, and the fact that he doesn't want to go to Dallas, look, whether he said it publicly or not, everybody interested would know. The teams would know. His agent would tell him. The Falcons would know. The Cowboys would know. They don't lose any leverage here.
My ultimate point, though, on Julio and why I know the NFL is not mad, because if Julio and his camp would have been mad and thought they got screwed, because if they didn't know this was coming and it made them look bad, they would have the right to be very up in arms. It would have came out that his camp was furious. They clearly are not, because I don't know, they were working with Shannon. So I could see the Falcons. It's just a natural reaction. They want to control the situation, and they lost control.
Yeah.
But to me, the NFL, I don't even think noticed. Because one thing I read was like Fox got in trouble. Right? Like the NFL got on Fox.
Yeah, I mean, look, Shannon would say like, no, Julio knew. If they're like, Shannon, what are you doing? He'd be like, Julio knew.
Yeah.
That'd be the end of it. Again, if Julio didn't know, then there's some responsibility from like producers and stuff to keep that from. But I don't even care about that. I really don't.
I know. But my point is, if Julio hadn't known, because I think there's some people that probably are on both sides. I think it would have been a pretty big story over the last 48 hours that his camp was incensed, right? That he was kind of embarrassed.
See, I don't even think Julio didn't know. He didn't say anything what he said only helps him anyway. It just accelerates. He just wants to. This was my point when it happened. Whether he knows or not, he just wants to get traded. This helps him get traded.
I think part of the problem for Julio is that just this hard date. Like, it's not one of those fluid situations like, will they trade him? Will they not trade him?
Yeah.
Like, Julio, there's a date that they just got to wait for.
I know.
I mean,
I
it's
know.
it's
So,
just that simple.
But as it relates to the Niners, I mean, again, multiple teams are not offering ones, and Julio does have some power over this thing. Not because he has a no trade. That's not that. But he could dictate to a team, I'm going to need an extension or I won't or whatever. But, I do think, as we've been discussing, if everyone's thinking about maybe we can get a deal on a player here, then probably no one's getting a deal because most people just think he's a good player and it's going to be expensive to get him.
He's not going to be a Niner. That much is pretty clear. I think he's going to go for more than was expected, right? Either a first or maybe like a second and a 3, because it goes back to the Mohamed Sanu thing. I mean, just the going rate for Julio is higher than people had hoped for. Right? Like, could you get him for a third because of the salary? No, it's like people just cut other people.
Yeah.
What about these teams don't have any room? Well, yeah, they'll get rid of their guard and their backup defensive end in about 3 days.
That's
they're going to be there. There could be some guys getting cut all around the league, not even for Julio. June 1.
That's where I also think it's interesting that, we haven't heard anything from Julio's camp about contract, which helps the Falcons. It helps the Falcons if you don't have to give Julio Jones a contract extension.
But this gets back to the way Julio does business. He's not some drama queen, right? No. That's just not his style. He's not clutch sports laying on the ground with his eye poked out.
But it may not be him leak. Like, if you're just another team out there, enough teams have talked to the Falcons, you have to kind of have a sense before you trade for him. Is he going to need a contract extension?
Yeah, but my point is, I think even if that's the case, it does feel like just the Julio Jones brand, like they do business a little Belichickian.
Yeah.
It's just like they're not going to get into this public match going back and forth. In fairness to Julio, like I understand, like just telling Shannon to call him just because you've had enough. No one wants to just be out there in the wind, like just trade me. But even though the hard date exists, it's just a bizarre situation, right? Because of the money, because of their cap situation, because of how much money he makes on their books. It's pretty complicated. Like, this doesn't usually happen. Guy like this, if he's going to get traded, wouldn't he just usually get traded like March 15th, right when free agency started?
Yeah, and let there be a full bit. But I guess when you're this good, teams, like you said, will move things around for you, right? Even after they have a roster set. Yeah, ideally you do this on day one, and then everything else falls into place behind the Julio Jones trade. But much like an Aaron Rodgers potential trade, people will move things, will push players off their roster as fast as they can if they can.
Facts.
So, a few people are suggesting in the chat, Julio, like all these how about all the Packers wide receivers that aren't showing up for Julio? I will just trade those guys.